director asking, do you do team services? You just give us a quick view on what you do in the commercial world. What people can people buy your services? Basically, is the question we're being asked.
Yeah, Graham, thanks for that. Yeah, you can. Yeah, I do. There's a mentoring program called Building Champions, which is based around several different aspects of personal development and leadership, and then another leadership framework. And it's a case of everybody gets like a hardback book, Building Champions book, individual to them, and then they have 5 40-minute one-to-one individual sessions with me, spaced every 10 to 11 days. And the idea is that over the course of 40 or 50 days, you can create some new habits by us talking, by setting some goals in 3 or 4 areas. You might set a goal in self-discipline, going the extra mile, delivering hard truths, and collaborating with your team. And then I hold you to account to it, and we work that way. And I think COVID-19's allowed me to develop to do this virtually. So that means I can do this. Used to be I used to have to go to a building and do 6 to 10 people, whereas now I can do it on an individual basis. It's been, people have really liked that over the the kind of lockdown and the change the way we are operating. So that's kind of the crux of what I do. And it's about kind of finding the best version of you by making some incremental changes over a period of 40, 50 days.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jamie. So we're going to go to our guests who've typed into the chat. First up, John Lee. When I bring you in, if you're happy to voice your question, please come on and shout up. If you'd rather it got asked, just to send us a DM and we'll ask it for you. So first up, John Lee, you've got a question for Jamie. No? Okay. We'll come back to John Lee. I'll find out where he is. Adam.
Sorry, I'm on mute.
Oh, there you are. Okay, John Lee, you're first up.
Yeah, cheers for that, Jamie. Appreciate it. In recent years, there's been a lot of, certainly in the rugby space, a lot of publicity around mental toughness, and when people are away from the game injured. I know one of your colleagues from the Rhinos had some with long-term injuries. How do people now cope with that? Because obviously we're seeing a lot of people getting a lot of mentally toughness being away from the office, so you're sort of away from that close-knit group, because I've played rugby in the past, and when you're injured, you're not in that group, you're not in that close confined space and that engagement. So I guess I'm trying to tailor it towards a COVID scenario as well as the rugby scenarios.
Yeah, John, I remember playing against you very well. Yeah, I think you were as big as you are now when you're about 11, weren't you?
Probably, yeah.
It's good to see you again. Look, I think the keys, I believe, when you're injured or to deal with lockdown is to have positive distractions. So for me, I had a positive distraction away from the game. So that would be setting up a business was a positive distraction for me. Spending time with my family is a positive distraction for me. Go out and walking in the woods is a positive distraction. And I think it's about understanding yourself and understanding what the positive distractions are. And so if I align it to rugby league as well, the problem rugby league players have who suffer from this when they're injured and they have mental problems is I often found that because they look in the mirror and they see themselves as a rugby player, not as a person who plays rugby. And I think that's the key. Whatever job you do, you should never see yourself as that job. You should see yourself as a person who does that job. And I think it's a really good way to be able to cope with things when you can't do that job anymore. And I think the more players that are able to do that, the easier they find it with transition and also to deal with injury as well. But I'm a huge believer, honestly, in positive distractions. I think, you need to have positive distractions in your life, and you need to work them out for yourself. You need to be self-aware enough to understand what your positive distractions are, what are the things that make you happy, what are the things you enjoy doing away from what your profession is or the thing you're doing at the moment. And I think that's the area they're trying to help rugby players with, is seeing themselves not as a rugby, seeing themselves as a person who plays rugby, and also trying to work with positive distractions as well, John.
Okay, cheers.
Brilliant. Thanks, John Lee, for getting us started so well. Adam Teakle, you were in with question 2, if you're still with us.
Yeah, thank you, Graham. So, Jamie, you spoke about when you first captained Great Britain, and one of the difficult things to do is bring that team together, because clearly week in, week out in Super League, you're playing against one another. I think you even used the word that you hate one another. I suppose that's kind of what the passion you need in the game. So when you came together, how did you cope with leading leaders? Because there are some strong characters in that Great Britain side that you managed, for instance, like Andy Farrell, a natural born leader himself. So how did you tackle leading leaders? Because I suppose a lot of these guys on this call, myself included, whether you're leading an IT team or whether you're being a CIO type role, you're going to be surrounded also by other leaders. How did you tackle that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think for me, what the overriding theme was, I think that type of leadership is about parking your ego to one side, and it's about getting the best out of the room, not being the best in the room. So the way I did that was in 2004 when I became captain of Great Britain for the first time. I realised it's not like a club scenario where you may have one or two strong leaders. You rightly say you've got 7 or 8 strong leaders in and around you. So the first time we go away to Spain in a training camp, get the leaders in the room, and I say, look, I need your help if we're going to perform to our best. I want you to lead like you would do at the club, because you're all strong leaders, you're all strong personalities, and if we work together, right, then we'll get the best out of this team. So that's what I want you to do. So don't feel like you can't say anything. Don't feel like you can't chip in when you want. So I want to create an environment that allowed them to flourish and be their best, and just go in, show some vulnerability, say, look, I need you, and get rid of the ego. And I think that's the best way to do that for me.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Adam. Martin Krangle, you were in with number 3.
Hi, good afternoon, Jamie. Just curious, if you ever had a period in your career where you maybe slacked off, or there were other distractions, maybe family or anything else, but I suppose the hard work and your experience and maybe your reputation carried you through, even though you know yourself you weren't at your best, and you weren't doing the 100% that you clearly do. I would say 99.9% of the time, but just interested to hear about the dips or anything like that.
Yeah, it's a good question, and there's a couple of things within that. I mean, firstly, I'm not Superman, right? I'm human, so I do have dips in my ability to be self-disciplined and extra mile. It's not relentless every single day, because I just think that kind of lifestyle is almost impossible and leads to burnout. So for me, during my career, I'd always try target like 3 to 4 week periods of games to be at my absolute best, and then take a couple of days off and download and get away from the game, avoid burnout, and come back to it. And that's what I do now with work. When I look at work, I work for myself, so you have work comes in waves, and when it's busy, you've just got to take it and ride with it. And then if I see it's going to be really busy for 3 or 4 weeks, I plan a break, for 4 days to get away, get my brain rethinking again. And because eventually, if you work consistently that hard and to that kind of level, you just drop off. You naturally drop off. It's like the brain's like it's like the body. If you overtrain, then your body starts going in negative results, and your brain's exactly the same. And if you think about it, if you went for a run, right, and you got stitched, you'd stop running, wouldn't you? Or if your hamstring hurt, you'd stretch your hamstring. But then if your brain's going a bit off and you're tired, a lot of people just keep working. They don't want to rest the brain. And I think it's crazy that we don't treat the two the same, that, they're both part of us and they both need breaks. So for me, I always tried to put in breaks in my career, and I do now in my career outside. And also, do you know what? I've messed up a lot of times in my life. I had a big incident, I reckon, in 2002. Beginning of 2003, I probably plateaued a little bit, and I'd gone away from the things that made me successful. And I think you can do that, Kai, when you have some success. And then what happened was I had a drunken night out, punched my hand through a glass window, and fractured my knuckles, had a 3-inch gash in my hand. I was out of the game for 6 to 8 weeks, and I was so embarrassed by what I'd done. I'd let the team down, my family, my friends, the fans, and just my own standards. And for me, it was a real wake-up call that during that time off, I realised, I got to the top because I outworked everybody with more discipline. I was a bit of a better leader than other people, so I had to get back to my values. And I think sometimes we can slip off course, but I think the key is when you do slip off course is to have that moment and realise and think, right, I need to get back on track. I need to get back to what I'm good at. And this can lead into, if you understand what your strengths are, you can get back to doing what your strengths are. But a lot of people don't even work them out, they don't even work what their strengths are out. So they're the reasons for me. I think you've got to plan breaks. You've got to understand your brain's just like a muscle. It needs rest at times. And I think, we make mistakes in life, but the key is to bounce back to who we are after them.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks, Martin. Carl Masters, you were our number 4.
Thank you very much. Awesome. I loved the examples where you're talking about speaking up when the team standards weren't where you felt they should be. But I just wondered if there were any times where you had colleagues, be it other players or coaches, that essentially didn't take to you speaking up as well.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you do, but I think I'd always come from the viewpoint that I'm saying it because for your benefit. It's not for my benefit, you know, like for when I pull the player up about the mouthing off to the coaching. Ultimately, that's for the team benefit. And I think I always ask myself when I give somebody some feedback, right, am I being selfish, or am I doing it for their benefit and the team? And if I'm doing it for their benefit and the team, then I have no issues delivering that hard truth to them. And if they've got a problem with it, I'll say that to them. I'll say, look, I'm doing this for your benefit. It's not to make me feel better. It's for your benefit from you. And if they don't want to take that on board, then it's tough. You know, they don't want to take that on board. It's a closed mindset, I feel, within that. A good way of being able to hold people accountable in front of the group and make an example is when, if you were delivering a talk to, say, 30 people about some standards, what I do with a couple of players who I knew were stronger in their capabilities to take feedback is before the meeting, I would say to them, look, I'm going to hold you accountable for this in front of the group and for this in front of the group, but I'm saying to you now, so I'll give you the heads up, and I'm saying it because I've got that respect for you. And I know if you take it well, then the rest of the group will buy into it. So that's a good way of getting some points across and dealing with people that you know could be quite difficult by giving them the heads up first before you deliver them some kind of criticism or feedback where they need to improve it in front of the group. I think that's a great technique to be able to try kind of avoid that kind of thing where people end up with having an issue with it. Is pre-warn people for that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Carl. That's a great tip as well. Thanks, Jamie. Great stuff as always today. Jake Sweet, you were number 5.
Hi, Jamie.
Hiya. Hey, all right, Jake. How are you doing?
Great talk. Thank you.
Cheers.
You spoke about going the extra mile yourself.
Yeah.
And I was interested to hear about how you may get your teammates to also go the extra mile, but when no one's looking over their shoulder, checking up on them, motivating them to perform or make that habit.
I think it's a good question. I think it's about building relationships with people. For me, if I could build a relationship with a player, spend some time with them, and then be able to approach that subject and say, look, I'm doing this. What about you doing some of this? Or come and do it with me. So some of the younger players, I get them to try do these extra fitness drills with me away from training and say, look, I'll try show you through what you do and talk, rather than just talk about to them, rather than just tell someone you should do the extra mile. I don't think that really works for people. I think you need to build a relationship with them, do an example of doing it, and then say, I think that's what you should do. Do an example, do it with me a couple of times. And then if they don't buy it, then they're kind of lost. I think it's better to do it by building a relationship, showing by example a few times, and then saying, look, well, I think this is what you need to keep trying to kind of do. And just explain to them that it's, extra miles, it's not about talent, it's about choices. And ultimately, I think our success is built upon our choices. So that's kind of how I approach that.
Awesome, thank you.
Cheers, mate.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jay. You've only come up in the chat as Steve B, but Steve B, you've got a question on work and home life balance, if you're still with us.
Yes, I am. Thank you very much. And thanks, Jamie, for your insights today. Yeah, my question was around how do you cope with a work-home life balance? How and when did you get to switch off? And how can you define that into being a leader in a workplace?
Yeah, again, I think I was probably, although factoring breaks when I was a player, I've maybe been a little bit too obsessed when I was a player. And I think now I have a real better understanding of there needs to be some balance in your life. And I think the reason why there needs to be some balance is you don't want to piss everybody off around you in your close circle. And also, I just think, for me, what I've become good at doing is understanding when I've had enough, when the stress levels are too high. So my indicators are, right, I get irritable at really little things, okay, really little things. and I also kind of close off from people. I like talking to people, but when I'm stressed out and I've had too much work, I close off to people. So what I try and do for my work-life balance is whenever I feel like that, I instantly stop working. I did it 2 days ago. I've been busy all day. Some stuff came through and I could feel my irritability rise straight away. So what I decided to do was go out for a walk with a partner and kids, spend some time with them, come back, ignore what I had to do, and did it the next day. And I felt a lot better for it, and the work that I delivered was a lot better. And I think what people have to do is to get rid of that kind of guilt feeling that people have, a guilt feeling if they're kind of not working and spending time with friends and family, because I think you have to understand yourself, and when you understand yourself and know I think people are better when they spend time with their friends and family, which means you're happy at work, which means you deliver better work. So I think firstly, Steve, it's about understanding yourself, understanding the key factors for you when you've worked too much. Second thing is, don't feel guilty about spending time with your friends and family. There was nobody on the grave when they're 10 seconds away from dying regretted working too much. You know, Whiteside said, I wish I'd worked more. No one ever said that on the grave just before they're about to pass away. But one of the biggest things you regret is about spending time with friends and family. So I think you need to find room for that. And if that might be, say, I'm going to go through a really busy period for me, which means to spend more time with friends and family, I'm going to have to get up early to get work done, but I'm prepared to pay that price. I'm prepared to get up, an hour earlier each day, so then I can get my work done and still see my friends and family. So again, finding a routine that kind of works. I hope that makes sense, Steve. All that babbling and waffling of mine.
Absolutely, no, that was really, really good. Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Steve. Dave Harper, you were up next.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for great talk, Jamie. I particularly love the time to get off the bus analogy. That's something that really works for me and really resonated. Yeah, fairly simple question, hopefully. Who's the best and worst coach that you've ever worked with, and why?
I would say that the best coach I've ever worked with will be Brian McDermott. I think coaches tend to come in three kind of categories. They're either very technical at the game, they've got good people skills, or they're a bit of a disciplinarian. And generally, there are 9 out of 10 in one and 4 out of 10 in the other two. But Brian McDermott was probably an 8 out of 10 in all them, or a 7.5. He's the most well-rounded. Technically, he could give us a really good game plan, which would nail in the big games. He had a real knack of being in and around people and could tell us a narrative to get us emotionally on board. And he was disciplined. He led in the right way. He told people the truth. He didn't shirk any of that responsibility. So for me, the way he lived his life and the examples he gave, he was the best coach I've worked with. For me, I've been fortunate. I know this is sitting on the fence. I haven't really worked with any really crap coaches. I would say that one characteristic that stands out that players didn't like the most is when a coach is not honest with them about being selected in a team. I think the coaches, it's that conversation no coaches want to have, but it's a conversation the best coaches deliver really well. Wayne Bennett was great at this. Wayne Bennett's another one who was great. He had great people skills, but boy, he was disciplined, and he said, a great quote from Wayne Bennett, he said to the players, he said, "Don't ever take my kindness as weakness." And I think it was a great thing from him, because he was really a people person, spent a lot of time building relationships with people, but some people can take that as weakness, and it certainly wasn't. It was just kindness, and I think he was good in that way. So best coaches, good with people, were prepared to have honest conversations, and had a good technical knowledge of the game. And I think Brian, for me, was the best who coached me anyway.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. That's great.
Brilliant, thank you. Stuart Simmons, you may have the last one. We might be able to squeeze one in quickly if Jamie's got time. But Stuart, I think you were the last in the chat anyway.
Very good, thank you, Graham. Excellent session, Jamie. Really appreciate the pitch, and I think the thing that's shining through there is the honesty, integrity behind all that you're sharing with us. I really appreciate that. And my question really comes to the core values that you've established throughout your playing career, and the things that really sustained you and how you maintain those core values. What drove you to define and implement those core values, and then maintain those core values, and then push other people to develop their own core values? What was the real driver behind that?
Yeah, it's a good question, this. I think obviously the things I've talked about today are aspects that allow me to be successful. And I think as you get older, you understand what your core values are as a person. And I was talking through the other day on a podcast about these with myself. My core values are, I always want to try and do the right thing. I want to do the right thing by people, you know, care about people. I'll always do what I'm saying I'm going to do, and I like to be honest. And I think the way I found out what my core values are is whenever I'm in a situation which is the opposite of them, it makes me feel really uncomfortable. So if I'm in a situation where someone's being treated badly, that makes me feel uncomfortable. If I don't deliver on what I'm saying I'm going to do, that makes me feel uncomfortable. And I think when we feel really uncomfortable about an action, the opposite of that is our value that's inside us. And I think as people, you've got to live by your values. You know, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for everything. And I try to stand by my values. And I think most people probably don't know what their values are, and I think most businesses know what their values are, right? You know, most great businesses have a set of 3 or 4 values, but I think as people, you should know your own values, what kind of you stand for, and when someone gets to know you, well, that's what I'm about. You know, this is me, these are my values, and this is what I'm going to try to live my life by, and I want to surround myself with people of the same values as well. So I think it was a period probably of self-reflection, and then beginning to understand myself, and then beginning to think, well, what am I actually about? You know, what am I about? And I think that comes with age and self-awareness. If you're self-aware and are getting older, you'll hopefully understand and try to work out what your values are, and then try to live your life by them. I think that makes sense, Stuart.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. It raises the other question in my mind of nurture versus nature. But I don't want to hog the session, so I'll hand the baton back to Graham.
Brilliant. Just checking that wasn't in. So that's done. Jamie, I don't know if you've got a summary, any kind of summary. I mean, you've just summarised with your values there. Is there anything in addition you'd like to leave anybody with thinking, just as a last word? Well, let me just do the thank yous. Thank you to you for a brilliant session. That's some awesome insight, and you know, brilliant to have you back with us again. Thanks to everybody from the Sales Filter CXO Group and the UK IT Leaders Group who's joined us. Any parting thoughts for us, Jamie?
I just think, yeah, thanks again for having me on. First of all, Graham and Dave, and thanks everybody for buying into the session and staying with us for an hour. Just for me, I think the key thing is just if you're interested in the 6 things that I spoke about, give them a crack. You know, go away from this, rate yourself, and have a go at doing them for the next 30 days and see where it could take you, and just have a daily effort to try and be a little bit better in it. And I think, you know, the investment you make in yourself is always the best investment you'll ever make, because you're going to benefit from that. So just have a crack of it, and just have a great summer. Enjoy the rest of your summer.
Brilliant. That's a great way. For those that want, we can connect you up with Jamie. Thank you, Jamie, for today. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Stay safe and stay in touch, everybody. We've got our conference, which Jamie's speaking at again on the 23rd of September. We'll be dropping everybody a note about that. It's a 3 o'clock till 5:30 in the afternoon, and we're partnering up with HMG Strategy in the US. So we will have some US Fortune 100 CIOs as part of our speaking folks as well. So if you'd like to see if you'd like to talk to Jamie in the meantime, we can connect you up, and he'll be back with us again on the 23rd. So thank you, everybody, for joining. Jamie, you're a star. Thank you.
Cheers,
Jamie.
Thanks all.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
Thank you.